vision of C-level to the managing director or the board or the head of the business. CFOs are obviously a good choice, and many CFOs are being elevated to the CEOs roles based on their ability to drive the change, to drive the operation strategy. So let's talk. Let's start talking about what are the current focus of CFOs. This survey has been done by a few big fours, where they are saying that the 65% of the CFOs believe that they are partners to the CEO in driving strategy. So the CFOs focus nowadays, the majority of the CFOs focus is towards driving the strategy, and they feel they are the partners, and by being partners they are taking the risk, and they are also driving the strategies. They are innovating, they are executing, and they are enabling the change, the transformation in the business. The other CFOs obviously have been different focus on the managing the cost, about 43%, setting up the budget and forecast, only one third, about 39%, finance is 33%, measuring performance about 27%. So you can see the things that we feel like the primary role of CFOs, like financing, setting up the budgets, measuring the performance, are very less. They are only about 27%, 37%. But 65% focus is towards deriving the strategy. And that is what is expected out of the CFOs as well. So how they do that? Why is they are able? How do they drive the strategy? So the one way in driving the strategy is when when we are making a business plan, when we are making our budgets, when we are making our forecast. CFOs help to establish a very clear financial baseline. What is the meaning of financial baseline? Whenever you are doing a forecast, whenever you are doing a budget for the future years, you are always trying to take some kind of base to say how much grow, how much we are going to grow. If you say it's going to be the last year numbers, it may not be feasible, because the last year numbers are may not be the correct way to determine the performance, because last year we may have a different strategy, this year we may have a different strategy. We may not be able to compare clearly against against the industry, because the industry might be having a difference, might be having a change. There may be a bit different business model, different value propositionings, and the way of doing business is kind of be different. Budgets and forecasts are also set based on the if they are set based on these two factors, then they are also useless. So CFOs help to understand a clear financial baseline to perform, to measure the performance of both the individual initiatives and also the overall transformational performance. So CFOs help in determining these baselines. How they do that? They, based on their experience, they will see, okay, what is we are doing now. So for example, if we take of what I do now, when we don't know, or we the previous year results are not relevant anymore because of the COVID, because of in Myanmar we have a political change happening as well, and that has made the last year numbers or the previous year numbers useless. So we don't really have anything at the moment. So and our strategies, what we have been doing now, were based on the foreign tourists. Now we don't have that kind of business because of the travel restrictions. So we are now changing the strategy. So how do we know that which strategy or which initiative is impacting? So first, we need to understand what is the baseline. What will happen if we don't have a strategy? Where are we going? How much money we can anyway make? Because the hotels are there, because the people know about the hotels. What if we don't do anything? What will be the result? And then I try to use that estimation as a baseline to see, okay, if we do any initiative, if we do a marketing strategy, if we do a community based tourism strategy, or whatever we are trying to do, how much extra we can make, how much would be the new revenue, to be really able to measure how what should be the performance metrics for us to determine whether we are succeeding in our initiatives or whether we are not succeeding in our strategies. So the CFOs, because of their unique position, help to understand the this particular financial baseline which is necessary for valuing the initiatives, whether we are able to achieve our goals, whether we are not able to achieve our goals. So because there is no cookie cutter formula, like you cannot just use last year numbers, you cannot use the industry numbers, you cannot just only use a simple last year number plus 5% increment over the previous years, or take the last year moving average of the business. So those things cannot be used in any kind of company because of the situations keep on changing, and they are changing very fast. So the baseline has to be adjusted because of these moving parts, because of the technological changes, because of the political changes, because of the restrictions, the endemic is going on. So there are many changes are happening in the world. There's always a new variant. Whenever we feel we are now going towards the normalcy, there's a new problem coming in and the business is stopped. So that way, that's why we also not setting up the financial baseline for too long. We are normally setting up the financial baselines for 3 months or 6 months at max, and then we review the situation every period to see how the situation is, to establish the new baselines for the next year, next period. So, as I have seen, many companies use the last year financial statements, but that may not be the reality, because you need to adjust that for the real time changes in the business environment. So that is the first thing, how the CFOs help in establishing the business strategies. And it's a very, very important part, because without the baseline, without the targets, it's very hard for the company to understand where they are standing now, and how much they should be growing, how much they are growing, and what kind of performance results they should be able to expect, and what are they actually expecting. So that's a very important part. The next important part of the CFO's role in operational strategy is the resource allocation and cash management. Traditionally, we know that CFOs are responsible for resource allocation, but not just only to raise the money, not just only to find the cash. The resource allocation also means the human resource. Resource allocation also mean the machine hours. Allocation also mean the capacity allocation for certain initiatives. So CFOs, being expert in budgeting and forecasting, they use I use the techniques called zero based budgeting for resource allocation, and for establishing what activities, what we should be doing, are going to help us in achieving our strategies. So the resource allocation practically will involve make the payroll. Obviously, payroll is the one of the largest expenses for any kind of organization. So establishing the payroll, where especially when the business does not really have much of the cash flow. So there are usually issues with the businesses who are not able to pay their cash payroll on time. So it is the CFOs has to allocate some money towards the payroll. Businesses are trying to stay afloat by introducing the pay cut or defer payments, or some other kind of measures. So the CFOs are now playing a very important role in carrying out those strategies. Then the sustainable revenue. So now the sustainable revenue means that the activities that we are doing for revenue increase has to be sustained. What does it mean? Maybe like we cannot be, for example, let's say if we want to sell something, we can go for the organic marketing. Sorry, hello. Okay, yeah, yeah. No problem. Okay, so the another part of the CFO's role is to make sure that the revenue is growing sustainably. Sustainably means that it can grow over and over without making much efforts. So, for example, if we want to grow our market share, we have a choice of organic marketing, which will take a long time, or ads, flash ads, and spending a lot of money on the ads marketing, which is can generate the revenue, but it's not sustainable, because may not be sustainable because the marketing cost may be higher than the revenue itself. Or and if we stop the marketing, we stop the ads, the revenue flow may also stop. So that's not sustainable. So the CFOs has to ensure that the resource allocation is going towards growing the sustainable revenue, which means that we are spending the money on both type of strategies. One is where it's organic and the revenue streams will continue to come even if we stop doing anything. And the other one is the flash. So we sorry, we still have to spend on the ads so that the expenses can come. So usually we set up the budget, how much return on the ad spend we want, whether we want $1 one return, every $1 on ads generate $1, or we want two, or we want five, or we want 10. It basically depends on the cost of operations as well. That's why many of the companies, they are shifting from calculating the ROI based on from the revenue rather than to the contribution margin. So what extra dollars spent on the marketing will drive the contribution, not the revenue itself, but revenue minus the variable cost, because that's where that's what is we the company is actually getting uh, the the revenue minus the cost of performing that kind of revenue, so the contribution margin. Then the next thing the CFOs are doing is the making wise capital expenditure. Capital expenditure are very easy. If you have, let's say, you have a lot of money, then you can go ahead and spend on anything. But when the cash is tight, or you are borrowing money, or you have multiple priorities, capital expenditure can be the maker or breaker in the sustainability of the organization as itself. Too thin, the company may not be able to scale, and too wide, company may not be able to survive with the cash requirements or the operational requirements. So the capital expenditure, normally the CFOs help the operational departments to prioritize whether they should be spending on the capital expenditure, or they should be spending on the variable expenses, which means operational expenses. Instead of spending all the money at the one time, we may buy expensive, or we may buy a little bit expensive, but is on variable based on the business. So that kind of trade-off is required, and the financial controllers or the CFOs are normally in the best position to review, not only based on the money, but also based on the risk that the business carries by having to rely on outside suppliers, by having to rely on the, or by making a lot of investment upfront. So that kind of decisions the CFOs are supposed to make. Then you have fuel the ongoing investments in R&D. So without R&D, the business may not survive for a long period of time. Every CFO is now focused on allocating some money towards the investment, even though towards the R&D, even though it may not give the immediate ROI, or traditionally it may not follow the standard capital budgeting, the methods of NPV or IRR or payback period. But the innovation and investments into R&D are a very important aspect of the business. So CFOs fully understand that, and they are supporting the innovations in the R&D. Then seize the market opportunities is another area where the resource allocation is required. You need to really go after the market opportunities to understand what are the, so there used to be, has to be a regular market research. There has to be regular innovation and update of the products. So that requires allocation of not only the money, but also the energy, the time, or the willpower of the organization itself. So seizing market opportunities is again another area where the resource allocation is required, and CFOs are pushing that. Then financing the continued business growth means the mergers or acquisition or acquiring new technologies from outside rather than doing the innovation by yourself. So these are the things where the again resource allocation is required, strategy is required, how we synergize with the business that we are going to acquire. That's we are also going to talk a bit more in our future slides. And then the facilitate the expansion plans because you need to make the provision for further expansions. uh, Stagnant business is going to die very soon. So the business has to continue to grow, continue to scale, continue to develop the new products, meet the customer demands. So that is the business requirement. So the CFOs has to allocate certain resources towards this long-term goals as well. So as you can see, the resource allocation is here is a mix of all type of horizons. A short-term horizon like the payroll and revenue, medium term, then capital expenditure, R&D, and D, and market opportunities, and long term, where we are talking about the business growth and expansion plans. So there is the CFO's role is towards all the horizons where the business can see. That's traditionally also required, and now the CFOs are putting more emphasis on these aspects of the resource allocation. So that was the resource allocation. How else CFOs are helping by in the operational strategy is by providing a financial leadership to the organization. Financial leadership means what I mean by financial leadership is not only the accounting or the finance, but also in other departments, which we are going to talk now. For example, in sales and marketing. So CFOs are not only helping the making the budgets and forecasts, but also making the strategies towards the sales and marketing, especially towards revenue management. So what should be the pricing, whether we should be what kind of distribution channels are more profitable, what kind of customers are more profitable when we are serving them, how should we sell, whether we should be doing offline, online, whether we should do discounts, whether we should do commissions. So these are all revenue management based on how much demand you think for your product. You need to adjust your prices, especially for industries like hospitality or airlines, where the product is really the perishable, or even the service industries, the consulting industries, the marketing companies, or the ad companies, where the talent is the product, and the that is perishable, because if you are not able to use your rooms, your seats, airline seats, your manpower, uh, is not is if it's not used, it's lost, right? So revenue management is again a very very important aspect of the sales and marketing strategies. There are trained revenue managers, not in every organization. They are trained commercial officers, but they may not be very well versed with the financial models. They may not be very well versed with the technical aspects of finance or profitability. So CFOs stand in a very strong position with based on their commercial acumen and business acumen to provide a revenue management leadership. So some many businesses revenue management is cannot be done without the finance heads. So that's where the one of the area where CFOs help. The other area is setting up the targets. So many businesses, whether it's B2B or B2C, they have salespeople, or and they need their sales targets to be set up. One way of defining the sales target is to take your next year overall budget and divide into the salespeople's equally, or by some kind of formula that the company may be following. Or you can evaluate the quality of the salespeople's and establish separate targets, or even leading targets. Not instead of just focusing on the final revenue numbers, the CFOs are helping the organizations to set the targets which are achievable and challenging. So that kind of judgment is again the CFO's expertise to lead. So that's where the CFOs are helping again. Then selecting the marketing campaigns by setting the right benchmark. So marketing campaigns, like for example, very simple example of Facebook. So you on Facebook, when you are doing any marketing campaign, you have multiple. benchmarks to see whether your marketing campaign is successful or not, right? You can look at the likes in the Facebook, you can look at the comments, you can look at the shares, you can look at the link clicks, or you can look at the message conversations, you can look at the lead generation forms which are available on the Facebook. So there are multiple versions of benchmarks. So CFOs help also to understand whether the benchmark that we are agreeing is the right one for the organization, and also is able to generate the right results by for the cost of campaign that we are running. Even though the CFOs may not be the marketing expert, but by knowing and having an experience in marketing, they understand how we can benchmark the campaigns. They may not be very well expert in graphic designing or writing the contents, but when it comes to the performance control, the benchmarking, they are the best. So that's why nowadays CFO like me, I am helping or my organization in being a acting CEO. I help my sales team in setting up the marketing strategies, revenue management strategies, sales targets, and also the benchmarking the market campaigns. So, how much whether we should be able to generate, whether we want to focus on likes, whether we want to focus on contributions, comments, or whether we want to focus on the lead generation, and how much money we should be spending, what kind of campaign we should be running, how many days, where, what should be the audience market. Now, you may say CFOs may not have that sort of technical knowledge, but by experience and looking at the results of past market campaigns, it's not very difficult to have a simple insight into the marketing campaigns or what works and what does not work. These selecting marketing campaigns also requires a lot of data analysis of your past performance. So looking at the right tool for getting the data of previous campaigns help the data analyst or you can say the CFOs to understand whether we are doing this time correctly or not. And because the CFOs are expert in data analysis, it helps to make they are more helpful in making the decisions. So the other and then also the incentive planning, how the incentive should be working, how much percent we should be giving, how we should calculate the incentive by making sure there is no risk, and we are covering all kind of risk controls, inherent risk in running the incentive plans. So that's again the financial leadership towards the sales and marketing department. The HR management also the finance CFOs are helping in the HR management part of the business operations by looking at the labor productivity. Certain departments can be directly linked with the labor, with the productivity. How many, for example, like customer service departments, their productivity can either be measured by how many calls they handle, if that's their job only, or how many problems they solve, what how much time they are taking in solving the problems, or how many leads they are generating if they are their job is to have a telesales, and what is the conversion rate or upselling or whatever. You may have a different type of metrics for determining the productivity of the associates or the human manpower. So the CFOs, even though they may not be the expert in HR, but they are very helpful in understanding what targets, what are the productivity metrics that the company should be using to determine whether whether the labor productivity there's a labor productivity or not, and whether it's the right metrics or not, and to measure it actually also, right? Because understanding only what to measure is one thing, and actually measuring it into the business is another thing. So the CFOs help with the with driving the labor productivity. I drove that initiative in my hotels about 10 years ago. As a finance head, we worked on the departments to see what should be the metrics of the performance of individual departments, how we are going to measure it. We try to set up the processes around of recording the productivity and the matrices, and then we measured it every month and to see whether we are in line. Sometimes we had to adjust the matrices, sometimes we had to adjust the standards by against which we are referring, based on the seasonality, based on the different based on the different type of business that we are getting, um, and segments. So labor productivity again is another area where CFOs really help in driving the operational strategy. Then the another one is the business performance and the individual performance management through the leading metrics. So, what are leading metrics? If you have learned about the the balance scorecard, there is a term called leading metrics, which means that we don't want to target the ultimate result. We want to target what activities are reaching there. So the very popular example, which is given many of the time, and at the cost of repeating it again, I'm going to explain it so that it's clear to those who are not understand, who don't understand it. So, for example, let's say if you want to measure your, if you have a target to reduce your weight by 10 kilo, so your performance management metrics is not your weight. It's the because weight is the ultimate result, and you don't control it, right? So the leading it's a laggard metrics, means you don't control it. Leading metrics will mean that the activity which we are going to control. So if let's say instead of setting up the target that we're gonna lose our weight by 10 kilo, we say the target that we will hit the gym for 30 minutes every day, or we'll walk we'll walk for 1 hour every day, or we will control our calorie intake to let's say 1000 in a day. So these are the activities which are in your control. You can control them and you can influence them. So those are leading matrices. By doing these activities, you will automatically reach your goal. So that's what the CFOs need to understand, because they understand the budget, they understand the finance, they understand the business operations in details. It's very easy for them to help the organization establishing the leading matrices. So the CFOs usually are the in charge together with HR to establish the leading metrics for performance for individual peoples and as well as the business. So, for example, in our organization, we don't have a revenue target. We have an activity target. So, if I say that, oh, our revenues, we are selling the hotels. So, if we say I want to have my revenues X amount, instead of saying that we need to have a revenue of X amount, I would say we need to have the events in the in the group by X amount. We need to have so much of comments. We need to have so much of marketing campaigns. We need to have X amount of upselling matrices. We need to have X amount of uh, uh, perform the marketing collaterals or calls to the new potential organization to potential guest, or we need to have upselling or distribution of certain upselling certain promotions. So instead of focusing on the laggard metrics, which is the revenue, we focus on the leading matrices, which are driving activities towards that particular goal. Then the third thing, and which is very important again, is the staff activities and benefits, because CFOs allocate the resources. So that's again, that's how they are also playing an important role in making sure that the staff activities and benefits are taken care of, because in current times, the benefits of the staff are getting reduced, and the depression or the burnout of the peoples working at home are getting also reduced. There are many companies I know that the CFOs are driving the activities which boost the morale of the companies. For example, the CFOs together with their procurement department are negotiating the discount coupons for entertainment centers, or making sure we are doing some team building activities offsite whenever they are permitted, or doing some other activities which help the like medical assistance, which help to reduce the depression and which helps to increase the sense of safety and in the staff. Um, so these are again some of the activities where the CFOs help. And the another important part is the succession planning, not only for the finance department but also for the other departments, because succession planning means that the guys has to be trained at every part of the business, whether it's the business analytics, finance, accounting, decision making, and CFOs being expert in these areas provide the goals or the assessment of the peoples to really try and be effective in succession planning, to make sure that the second in command leaders are always ready to take the leading roles in the organizations. And that's a very important part. Is a long term growth perspective. The other department where the CFOs help in operational strategy. Yes. Yeah, we can launch. Thank you. Yeah. So we were talking about the capital expenditure management that the CFOs help in participating in the business strategy. Why is a part of business strategy? Because capital expenditure is required for expansion, for maintenance of existing capacity, and also the capacity planning for the business. So capital expenditure is definitely a huge part of their business strategy usually, because nothing works without the resources. So when we are managing the capital expenditure, the CFOs usually help with the prioritization. So the one thing that the capital expenditure management requires is the prioritization of spend. Whether we should be spending on this now or later or next month, what should be the priority? Whether the life safety is required or the expansion requirements are prioritized, whether the business survival type of expenses are required. So, for example, the building may be old, and you have only $10,000. The fire control panel, which is essential for the business for the building safety, is also $10,000, and there is another $10,000 worth of machine where which is necessary for having a business growth. So which one you will choose first? Whether you're gonna buy a machine which is good for future business, or we are going to buy the fire alarm panel or fire control machine, which is essential for surviving in the building today. So that kind of pride, there is no right or wrong answer, because it depends really on the current business circumstances. How often, how much time do we have before the risk assessment? So that requires a lot of experience and a risk assessment and assessment of different choices. So CFOs being risk management experts are helping with the prioritization of these kind of issues, whether what should we be doing first and what are the alternatives. So the more important part of prioritization is what should be the alternative, because everything need to be done in one way or the other way. So how can we do it? By spending our own money, or by borrowing, or by leasing, or by financing? What should be the way? Then the other aspect is the business growth. Every part of the capital, every year, all the companies have to spend some part of their money into business growth planning. As we discussed on the previous slide, it requires the growth funding, it requires the investment into the R&D or the innovation financing. So that's what is the importance of the business growth planning. So CFOs have to prioritize and allocate some money, some resources of their capital expenditure towards the business growth or the future innovations, and also monitor the returns on existing investments, whether we should continue to have it, uh, whether when we are talking about the business returns on existing investments also means the product, the business verticals, and also the locations, the divisions or the department or the branches, or the foreign operations. So the CFOs have to evaluate each and every time whether these investments are making returns or not. If not, we need to really take a strategic action of what we should be doing. And innovation financing, because especially the technological businesses, or every kind of businesses nowadays, not only the tech business, is facing the innovational challenges, the disruption from not only from the new businesses, but also from the disruption caused by the pandemic, or by the political changes, or by the environmental changes that are happening around the world. So those innovations are required so that the business can survive a long period of time, right? So that's again the priority. Then support the support the key skills that are that the CFOs use in helping with the business strategy that we have discussed. The main three key main parts: the revenue, the human resource, and also the business expansion. Apart from the finance management, is the so these how we support these business skills. So there are three, four key business skills that CFOs possess, which help them to carry out these targets. And this is something the future CFOs also need to possess, or you need to evaluate whether you have these skills, or you need to acquire these skills. The first thing is the negotiation skills. Negotiation does not mean that we have to negotiate only with the suppliers for a lower price or for a better deal. Negotiation also means with internal negotiations within your organization, from your superiors, with your juniors, and with your peers, about your ideas, which one you want to present, or why it should be the best. And negotiation is not about the winning, it's about the win-win situation. As you already would be aware of, every time it's not a zero-sum game where where you win I lose, or I win you lose. It's more of a 11, 1 plus 1 is 11 game, where everybody wins. So negotiation skills are required. And to be able to do the negotiation, the CFOs has to be empathetic and understand the other people's challenges, where they are coming from, and the perspective that other parties have, and what are their agendas, what they want to have it, so that it's easier for the negotiation to be successful. And these are the key skills which are, because the CFOs possess it, they it's like their daily kind of job to negotiate. So that comes naturally to us. Then the other skills which sets them apart, and which requires the skills, is creating the financial models for making the business decisions, uh, and evaluate the options that you have. Every business problem is presented with the multiple options, right? And the CFOs has to make those options available, and evaluate the financial impact, evaluate non-financial impact also. So financial models can also be built to create the non-financial impact by the other matrices, which also has to be considered by the businesses when we are making the business decision. Then the risk management in the projects. Ability to estimate the risk and carry on the process to mitigate those risks is a very important skill. Not only in projects, projects does not mean that it has to go for a 2 year or 5 year, or it has to have a big money. Every single project, whether we are doing a very simple IFRS conversions, or we are implementing a huge ERP, or even we are taking a small project, doing a small mini marketing campaign for a few days, everything is a project, right? And every project or every decision that we take carries the risk, and the risk management is important. Understanding the so to understand the To do the risk management, one has to understand the risk first. What are the inherent risks, and how severe are they? What are their likelihood, and what would be their impact if the risk comes true? Then the prioritization of risk happens, and then we take the corrective actions to make sure that they don't happen. Means we do the preventive controls rather than the corrective controls. Then the another important aspect of the CFO skills, which is important in business strategy, is the business continuity planning. The business continuity planning means that we have to be ready with any kind of disaster, any kind of disruption happening today, whether we are digital ready, whether we have a backup of our existing documentation processes, whether do we have alternative suppliers if something go wrong, whether do we have a succession planning in case any of our key employees start. So those kind of things are very much required in the businesses to continue have a business continuity planning. So those are the things. I think we can launch the remaining polls. Okay. Kate, you there? So we can run the other poll. You? Okay, so the last thing that we have here today to discuss is the merger and acquisition. So the CFOs also play a key role in merger and acquisition operational strategy by being a growth advisor, whether we should be having a merger or acquisition, and whether we should not be. And then the CFOs also help to identify and evaluate the targets, where what are the targets, or whether we should acquire some company, or whether we should find the partners where we can have the operational synergies, what kind of operational synergies we will be able to get, what kind of strategic synergies we will be able to get. Sometimes the it helps to increase the market share of the companies. Sometimes it helps to reduce the cost of the company. Sometimes it helps to launch a new product or a new feature into their existing products. So these possible synergies, operational synergies, also have to be identified. And what are the benefits? Whether the benefits that we are able to take now are going to outright the cost that we are going to pay. So that has to sometimes be evaluated, so that we don't overpay for the mergers and acquisition or for the targets. uh, we have seen many companies make 20 times or 30 times of their investment and sometimes make zero because of the wrong execution. Then the CFOs are also helping are contributing by doing the due diligence of the targets, value assessment for negotiating the prices, whether what should be the estimate price that we should be ready to pay, and then also working on to integrate the functions like accounting, HR, legal, and everything else, and execute the deal. Manage the transformation and change management is one of the important aspect of the CFO's role. Because of their hold or their touch with the multiple departments and multiple functions and their function heads, the CFOs have a very strong ability to manage the change or lead the change per se. So those are the some points where I we feel the CFOs are helping the businesses in carrying out the operational strategies. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to take them now, or we can run the last poll as well. Last question. Okay, thank you. So if there's any Q&A, if there's any question or anybody would like to ask anything, mhm.